You'll see it's pretty easy to ask people for recommendations on LinkedIn, but how do you get enough of those people to actually write those recommendations, and those recommendations are written in a way that boosts your credibility? So let's look at this all step by step. The first thing you need to do is strategize your list of the people you're going to ask. And I strongly encourage you to ask people in this order. First, you're going to ask your clients or people who would be called your superiors, like people who used to be your boss. Recommendations from these people carry the most weight because they chose to work with you, and they've been judging you the whole time, although in a totally nice way. And then you can ask your colleagues or other people who have worked with you. Now, the key here is only asking people who really have experience working with you, because then their recommendation is authentic, and honestly, it's going to be easier for them to recommend you when they can draw from actual experience. Now, keep in mind that practically every single person you ask is going to be happy to help, especially when you use my method of asking that I'm going to show you. But from my experience, even when people have the best of intentions, only about 50% of people end up actually writing the recommendation, and it's because people get busy and distracted. And I don't know about you, but when someone falls through on something like this, I feel uncomfortable nudging them and asking them to do the favor that I asked them to do, but they don't really have to do it. And then I feel awkward, so then I just let it go. But maybe you're braver than I am and you would do it, but I just don't feel comfortable with it. So I recommend, at least for people like me, write a long list of people you want to ask, understanding that about 50% of them will actually follow through. You also want to spread out your requests for these recommendations. One piece of advice that is rarely mentioned but is so important is to not ask everyone at one time for a recommendation. And this is a huge mistake I made in 2012 when I magically got 6 recommendations in just 2.5 weeks. To any outsider looking at my recommendation section, it is super clear I was on a recommendations rampage. So if you have a list of, let's say, 20 people you want to ask, unless you're in some recommendations emergency, which I guess could happen, break them down into 4 people you're going to ask each month for 5 months. This is kind of how I would plot it out. Then if you really want to make sure it gets done, enter it as a monthly recurring task in your calendar till it gets done. At least that's what I need to do to make sure I get things done. And if we haven't met yet, I am all about helping small business owners create a social media program that gets results and can be done. And now we get to the super fun part, and that is strategizing how you're going to ask for these recommendations. Now I'm going to give you 2 options for how you ask for these recommendations. One of these is a bit passive aggressive, but it has totally positive vibes and it can work. And the other way is more straightforward. So let's do the passive aggressive first, and that is where you're going to write someone a recommendation in the hopes that they write a recommendation back. So in the search bar, type the name of the person you're going to recommend. And I'm going to use my husband in this example because I'm known for being a bit passive aggressive with him, but in a totally loving way. So now you're going to click on the person's profile, in this case my husband's profile, in the search results. Now click on the More button here, kind of near the top of their profile, and then click Recommend. Now you can select what your working relationship is with them and what position they were in when you worked together, and here's where you write the recommendation. Now, to the point that I made earlier, I'm not going to actually write a recommendation for Steven because he sells thin layer chromatography plates, and I have not yet had the opportunity to buy thin layer chromatography plates for the research lab that I don't have, so my review would not be authentic. Now, here's the key. Once you write that recommendation, please do not go to that person and then ask them for a recommendation back, because all that does is make it super obvious that your act of kindness had an agenda, even if it did. And the people who want to return the favor will return the favor. And for those who don't, just give yourself a pat on the back that you did an act of kindness. Now here's the more straightforward approach, and that's where you just ask for the recommendation, although with still some strategy. Now before you send your recommendation request through the LinkedIn system, which I'm going to show you, I strongly urge you to either pick up the phone and call the person or email them with a personal message asking them for this favor. So in your voicemail or your email, there are 3 points you want to convey. The first one is you're trying to beef up your LinkedIn profile because you're trying to grow your business. And it's so important to share the why, because when people know why you're trying to do something, they're going to rally for you. The second point is you're really hoping that they're willing to give you a brief recommendation on LinkedIn. And the third point is that you're going to go ahead and send that LinkedIn request and thanks in advance if they can help. And yes, leaving a voicemail or sending an email is an extra step, and I don't see other people who teach about LinkedIn recommendations teaching about doing this step. But here's why I urge you to do it. You're essentially asking someone to take 10 to 15 minutes out of their life, 10 to 15 minutes they'll never get back, to do you a favor. So when you take the time to ask them outside of LinkedIn and also in LinkedIn for this favor, it shows them how important this is to you and also shows them that you're willing to invest the time too to make this happen. Now you want to help them craft the recommendation in the best way possible. And you're going to do this as you send your request through the LinkedIn system. So navigate your way to the person's profile, then just like before, click on the More button, but this time you'll click on Request a Recommendation. And on the next screen, let's fill this out like I'm one of his vendors. So in the relationship drop-down menu, I'll say Stephen was a client of mine with my current job experience, Delaware ShoutOut. Now what you fill out in this field below is key. We want to personalize this. So delete the default text and replace it with something like this. Hi Stephen, greetings. Hopefully you got my voicemail. I've been working hard to improve my LinkedIn presence to grow my business, and I'd be so grateful if you could write a brief recommendation on my LinkedIn profile. Okay, so far all of this is a repeat from before, just to reinforce. Now you're going to give them the instructions. Would you be willing to write maybe 3 to 4 sentences about how your social media was before we started working together and how your social media is now? In other words, we're asking for a before and an after. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much, Stephen. Brooke. The key here is asking the person for a before and an after. Remember that when a client hires you, it's always to solve a problem. It's to fill a void, it's to fix something that's wrong. So there's always some type of before and some type of after. That means there's a transformation, there's a story. And even if that story is just 3 to 4 sentences long, that is going to make your recommendation magical. Now, suppose the person you're asking has already reviewed you/your business on Google or Facebook or Yelp or one of those sites. Should you ask that person to simply copy and paste that text into their LinkedIn recommendation for you? And believe me, I used to think this is a good idea because it's a time saver, and anything I can do to save people time, I'm going to do it. But it turns out it's not a good idea, and here's why. Anytime there's any type of duplicate content anywhere on the internet, search engines like Google don't like that, and it can really, really hurt your search engine rankings. So if you're in a situation where someone's already reviewed you somewhere else, simply ask them to reword the recommendation for LinkedIn, or ask them to share their before and after experience if they haven't done so already. And when you're done, press send, and here's what it looks like from the other person's end when they get your recommendation request. And of course I can see this because I can log into my own husband's LinkedIn account. And by the way, I've already forewarned him about this LinkedIn recommendation request. I've asked him to just ignore it because it would be dorky getting a recommendation from one's husband. Anyway, once you get a recommendation back, LinkedIn gives you a chance to review it and even ask for some changes if needed before you officially publish it. Now that you know how to ask for recommendations, your next step is to make sure the rest of your profile looks good so you can stand out from your competitors. So feel free to binge watch this playlist in the top right corner about LinkedIn profile best practices. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video.